The anime begins with the image of a boy walking through the corridors of a base that is clearly under attack. However, he doesn't seem to mind and simply asks the camera about Asaka. At that moment, we see that the girl the boy is looking for is inside a room, being grabbed by the neck and aimed at with a weapon by another girl. Despite the tense situation, the boy manages to reach Asaka, and even though the situation is intense, he ignores everything and is just thrilled to see her. This surprises both girls, and Asaka asks him what the heck he's doing there, but she is quickly interrupted by the other girl, who warns the boy that if he moves, she'll end Asaka. However, the boy doesn't need to move because suddenly something strange happens to the armed girl, causing her to release Asaka, who falls lifeless to the ground. Asaka doesn't understand what just happened, and the boy quickly approaches and hugs her, asking her to go home together, which calms the girl. It turns out that all of the above was just a dream, and our protagonist, named Yogairai Takatu, is awakened by a desperate high school girl. He doesn't understand what's going on and asks the girl her name. She replies that her name is Tomochika Dan Naura, and upon knowing her name, the protagonist remembers that she is one of his classmates. He asks her if they had already arrived at their destination, but she, annoyed, asks him how he could keep sleeping during so much commotion, as two of their classmates had been attacked and were lifeless on the bus. The protagonist, upon seeing this, doesn't even flinch and simply asks the girl what happened, which angers her because she also doesn't know what's going on. At that moment, they see something moving outside the window, and the protagonist stands up without being sure of what creature it is. He picks up a microphone from the floor and throws it at the monster, causing it to fly out the window. Upon closer inspection, he realizes it's a wyvern. The monster wastes no time and heads to attack them. However, the protagonist, using an unknown power, manages to defeat the wyvern without touching it. Tomochika doesn't understand what happened, and the protagonist, quite calmly, takes out a switch and asks her to calm down so he can tell her how they ended up in that place. After a while, Tomochika manages to calm down, and the protagonist tells her how everything happened. It turns out that, while on their way to an excursion, the school bus passed through a tunnel. Upon exiting the tunnel, instead of continuing on the road, they ended up in a sunny meadow. Additionally, moments later, a girl named Cheyenne boarded the bus and introduced herself as a sage. Frustrated by the teacher's lack of understanding of what was happening, he asked her angrily who she was. Cheyenne, without exchanging words or even looking at him, ended him and asked the rest of the bus to focus on paying attention. She assured them that she had no intentions of harming them, but if they angered her, she wouldn't hesitate to do so. She boasted that her attack power was 530,000, something that, according to her, should have made the bus driver laugh. Seeing that it didn't amuse him, she also decided to send him to St. Peter. After dealing with the driver, Cheyenne continues to explain that she has summoned them to this world to become sages since this world is governed by them, and occasionally, they need to replenish the number of existing sages. At that moment, Cheyenne raises her hand, using a power that causes almost everyone on the bus to shine, except for Tomochika and a few others who don't shine. Cheyenne explains that she has installed a program called Battle Song, and that they should be seeing the license logo in their field of vision. Upon learning this, Tomochika asks her friend Michi, who is shining, if she can see it. Michi says yes and adds that they can also see their own statistics. Cheyenne, the sage, explains that this system is called Gift, and if used properly, they can aspire to become sages, but they have a 1-month deadline to do so. At that moment, Tomochika, worried, tells Cheyenne that she didn't shine and can't see any logo. Cheyenne replies that there are simply people who are not a good option to become sages, and she should accept the reality. After that, Cheyenne mentions that everyone's first mission will start in an hour and advises them not to let themselves be annihilated as she leaves. After the sage leaves, Tomochika's friend explains the mission, which involves a dragon that loves eating humans attacking them. Knowing they don't have much time, Suguro Yasaki, who had acquired the ability of a general, suggests working together and asks others to share what abilities they possess. While all this is happening, our protagonist continues to sleep. After everyone has shared their abilities, they realize that the only ones not shining are another girl named Ayaka and a boy named Yuichiro. The protagonist and Tomochika, after a while, begin to get off the bus. Tomochika tries to wake up the protagonist, but when Yuichiro tries to get off, he is stopped by Suguru, who now possesses super strength thanks to the gift system. He uses it to lift 2 bus seats, blocking the path for the kids who haven't obtained any abilities. Suguru confesses that they are a burden and, in response, orders Suja to use his ability, making the kids much more attractive to monsters. Before leaving, he confesses that his strategy involves leaving them behind as bait and essentially sacrificing them so that the others can be safe. Upon hearing this, Tomochika is sure that her friend Michi shouldn't have agreed to this, but he reveals that she did, leaving the high school girl shocked and locked inside the bus. All of this happened so that, seconds after being locked inside, the dragon appeared, attacking them and ending the lives of Ayaka and Yuichiro. But well, returning to the present, after hearing this whole story, the protagonist wonders only how he can charge his switch within this, and he falls, which obviously annoys Tomochika. Yogairai, already knowing the story, tells Tomochika that considering what she had told her friend about there being only one dragon in the area, it is safe to leave the bus. At that moment, the girl asks him if he had done something to end up like this, but the protagonist replies that they must have collided and died when they were in the tunnel, something the high school girl didn't want to believe. However, the protagonist doesn't care whether she believes him or not. Upon exiting the bus, Yogairai realizes that the 3 options they have to go are a hill, a city, or a forest. However, Tomochika notices that something is flying towards them, turning out to be Higashida, Fukuhara, and Hanakawa, 3 of their classmates. The protagonist, knowing that, asks if he should kill them, to which she sarcastically tells him no. Still, the protagonist is not very sure about letting them live because leaving them there is something an assassin would do, so it's very likely that the approaching kids are hostile. The kids, upon getting closer, are surprised to see that the dragon is dead, and they are even more surprised when they see that Tomochika is alive. At that moment, one of the kids throws a giant fireball, destroying half of the bus, and tells Tomochika that there is no point in resisting and that she should go with him. The high school girl doesn't understand why they are doing all this and asks them the reason. It turns out that the kids promised that in their second life, they would do whatever they wanted, and what they want is Tomochika, which terrifies her, and she asks them if they are trying to flirt with her. The protagonist, seeing that it was more than obvious that they wanted to do inappropriate things to her, tells the girl that he is surprised she has the audacity to say such things in a situation like that. So he decides to solve the problem they have and points his finger at the kid who threw the fireball, telling him to die. This amuses his companions until they see that the kid falls to the ground, and they just wonder what happened. The protagonist clarifies their doubt by telling them that he died because he ordered it. So he also orders them not to move. However, one of the kids approaches the one on the ground, causing Yogairai to also finish him off, warning the last one remaining that if he moves, he will die. The kid, very nervous. Upon seeing all of this, Tomochika understands how Yogairai had managed to defeat the dragon so easily, and he tells her that he hadn't explained it to her because it was a hassle. However, since the remaining boy seems quite foolish, he felt obliged to explain to avoid another fight. Nevertheless, the boy thinks that the protagonist went too far with what he did, but Yogairai tells him that he was just defending himself. So he continues explaining that his ability is called instant death to any object and consists of the fact that if he thinks he wants to kill someone, they will die immediately. Already knowing that he doesn't have many options, the last of the attackers decides to play the victim, but the protagonist is not fooled and stops him, knowing he was planning something he indeed was planning, but he vehemently denies. The protagonist confesses to him that, in addition to the ability to kill, he also possesses one that ends anyone who intends to kill him, and having both abilities, it is even possible that his target will die just by intending to harm him, causing the chubby boy to give up. Having observed the attitudes of these 3 boys, the protagonist asks why they are so proud of their gifts, to which the curator confesses that it is not the first time they have come to this world and tells him the epic story of how they defeated a demon king. However, the protagonist doesn't care much, and knowing that they had been in that world for some time, he asked Tomochika if they had missed many classes, which was not the case. The boy confesses that when they returned, only a few hours had passed, making the protagonist realize that there is a possibility of returning to the real world. Also, knowing this, the protagonist planned to end the boy because he would no longer be useful, but the boy took out a collar that fulfills their every wish and offered himself as their servant. Unfortunately, the protagonist did not want a servant either, so he ordered him to leave all his valuable items and venture into a dangerous forest. As the boy left, Tomochika asked him if he was sure about that, and Yogairai told her yes because he couldn't trust him. In response, the girl asked him why he trusts her and protects her so much, as before being in that world, they didn't even used to talk, making the protagonist think and concluding that it was because when the dragon attacked them, she hugged him, and her assets felt soft, embarrassing Tomochika quite a bit. Elsewhere, we see Cheyenne lying in her bed, and a boy named Ichi interrupts her to give her a report about the future sages, informing her that 4 of them died in the first mission. She thought it was all the people without abilities, but she is surprised to learn that 2 of them did have abilities, making Ichi think it could have been instant death magic. However, Cheyenne thinks it's very strange for the system to fail, so she doesn't give it much importance and goes back to bed. And thus, this first episode ends. Subscribe to see more anime summaries, and let me know in the comments which other anime you'd like me to cover. This is Prime Animes, and see you next time.